shoulder. You did good at conning the matriarch into letting Axika take the fleet out on an aid mission. As Tens turned and locked eyes with Binko, the avian continued. They probably could have got a few billion off by themselves. But that's not even half the population. And stretching evac out to the last second, while risking transports on the ground. Billions of Kayamayak are alive because of you. Now, let's get back to the hammer before the Atik sends someone to come collect us. Go ahead. I'll be right behind you. Ten said with a bit more confidence in his voice. I'm just going to put out this fire real quick, so it doesn't spread and set off any charges prematurely. Yeah. Hurry up. Binko replied, while already making his way back to his shuttle. Standing up and using the side of his foot to push a prepared pile of dirt over the small fire, Tens watched as embers flew away and burnt out. Satisfied with the averted risk to their near planet-wide trap, he turned to follow the avion. By the time he had taken the second step, night had suddenly turned to day by a light brighter. Then a supernova light up their surroundings. Everything from the tips of the tallest giant ferns to the deepest recesses of the undergrowth looked as if they had been lit up by a searchlight. Even as Ten slammed his eyes closed, the light only seemed to get brighter. Dropped to the ground and pulling his hood over his head, he prayed the layers of lead and interwoven beryllium gold would shield him from whatever radiation he was currently being exposed to. Taking far longer to fade than it did to arrive, the blinding white light in his eyes slowly eased. Almost afraid of what he would see, he stood up, carefully held his hood above his head, and started making his way back to the shuttle. The night sky, previously filled with brilliant though dim splashes of color and flickering starlight, was now a writhing sea of intermingling aurora. The spectral emission of every element present in the middle and upper atmosphere were on display as every color that could be perceived lit up the sky. Running into the shuttle and seeing Binko on the floor of the cargo, hold in the fetal position, Tens quickly rushes to his side. Placing a hand on the avian's shoulder caused him to twitch, untuck his head from under his wing, and begin rapidly blinking. Tens! I can't see shit. I think I'm blind. Binko was obviously terrified of his current situation. However, before Tens can react, the shipboard AI speaks up in a soothing tone. There appears to have been some sort of high-energy discharge along all known tachyon, and quantum spectra. High levels of UV exposure may cause minor damage to croak biology, particularly the UVA and B visual receptors. However, any damage should be minor and likely self-repairing. Human biology does not seem to be at risk of damage due to exposure, aside from temporary blindness, which has likely already passed. Hear that? You'll be fine, buddy. Once we're back on the hammer, we'll have medical. Give your eyes a good look. Now let's get you strapped into a chair. Delicately, Tens was able to support Binko and guide him into the closest seat and strapped him in. Thank you, Tens, still rapidly blinking and tilting his head side to side to try to see something. Binko finally stopped his inaudible whining and tried to center himself. He let that hang in the air for a moment, then continued. Fuck, I still can't see shit. 3-5? You're going to have to take us up and out. Dock us in the pre-approved bay on the hammer and send a message to medical that I need to get my eyes checked. Yes, Captain. Speaking of the hammer, You have an incoming AV comms address from the Admiral. Patching through on cargo comms screen now. Bracing himself with a wide stance, one arm against the wall, and the other placed gently on Binko's shoulder to help stabilize him for orbital injection. Tens turned his head to look towards the projector array at the head of the cargo bay. A speckling of light purple freckles contrasting against deep blue skin. Thick reddish-orange braids and glaring crimson eyes manifested through a series of holographic displays against the wall of the bay. Her deep blue lips, pulled tight against two large, protruding lower canines, showed an expression of concern for what she was seeing. There was a moment of silence as the ship began to take off. Take a breath, ATX. We're all right. Binko here just got temporarily blinded by whatever that discharge was. Speaking of which, his sing-songy tone was doing its best to help calm this situation. There was another moment of silence as the holographic expression of concern slowly shifted to a smile. We don't really know yet. Axika's voice seemed quite animated, but it must have been moving faster than light. And wasn't just tachyons. We recorded a major quantum and tachyon flux, an object entering the system, and then a blast. Not even a half-second later, our close surveillance drones, monitoring the mass, were reporting readings beyond sensor capacity. They showed the mass 1 second, a flash of white the next, then a massive gravitational anomaly where the mass used to be. And finally, nothing. All drones within about a light minute have stopped responding. When light finally catches up to us, sensors say we're going to see a micro-singularity collapse. The excitement in her voice was palpable. For a third time, silence filled the cargo hold as Tens and Binko, the former's delicate sight just starting to come back, simply stared at the projection. Someone not shown in the projection caught Axika's attention and prompted her to step mostly out of the frame of the projector while lifting a hand towards it. Where the woman's face was once projected, it showed the normally reserved, stationary, and quite professional bridge crew in a state of panic. The pixelated outlines of a few different species could be made out frantically moving from workstation to workstation. Whatever was going on must have been causing quite the stir. I think I saw her starting to drool a little bit. Binko whispered into Tens's ear while tilting his head up and moving to get his beak closer to Tens. The burst of air pressed through Tens's lips as he used the hand he had been helping stabilize Binko with to push his beak away. With a playful wink, Tens added, "But if it was a weapon, she absolutely will want one." The two shared a chuckle, which was cut short as the Admiral came back into frame with an incredibly serious look on her face. Tensuvzi of the Nishnab, Combat and Diplomacy Advisor to the Admiral of First Fleet of Third Matriarch. An address like this meant something official and important. Though the Nishnab militia training Tens had gone through was nothing like the rigors of Quiztar military academies, he immediately snapped to a formal position in front of the holographic face as if his training elder had been standing right before him. I have received direct orders from the High Matriarch to follow an ad hoc first contact protocol created by the Singularity and issued through the GC Central Command. They are requesting that all, pausing to look down and appear to struggle to read something. Cool, man. Crew members be restricted to quarters immediately. Dropping his posture slightly and repeating the word to himself, Human. A glance over towards Binko. only solicited a gesture of equal confusion. Looking back towards his admiral, he reasserted his formal posture and responded with a clear and accepting. "Your orders are mine to follow. Axika of Tenyi Hyosh, Admiral of the First Fleet of the Third Matriarch, the stalwart of destruction." The last part was just to see if he could get her light purple freckles to luminesce, the Quiztar equivalent to blushing. To his surprise, it worked just well enough to notice. Tense. "I promise, I have absolutely no idea what's going on." Axika let her demeanor slip a bit. The singularity is sending someone to administer this first contact. Before the onboard AI had finished deciphering the ship's attempts at communications, we had hails from the Grand Matriarch, GCC, and Singularity. I don't know if it's because of who they are, how they got here, or how much damage they did, but everyone's chomping at the bit to meet these humans. She paused for a moment, even though she knew he didn't need any more time to process what he had heard. Knowing him as well as she did, she knew he already had a fairly good idea of what was going on. "And before you ask, I haven't been briefed on their state of development or current status. I don't think anyone besides a few people at Central have been briefed yet. There's only one elder on the council that stays informed, and that role demands the highest respect for secrecy. All I know is that I'll know what I'm supposed to know when I'm supposed to know it." He had used his most sacred tone of voice to show respect towards a phrase that he had come to appreciate in this more formal system of military. Not to spoil the mood, he quickly switched to something a bit more playful. "But I've also been awake for like 3 days now, so I'm ready to fall asleep standing. I need my beauty rest so I can be good arm candy." The sudden realization of how tired he was caused his yawn, which drew out for dramatic effect as he shot the hologram a wink. The now quite luminescent freckles could only be seen for a moment as Axika waved one of her large muscular arms towards the transmitter to end the conversation in comms. The shifting forces of the graph panel's flooring compensating for the sudden acceleration of the shuttle transitioning out of atmosphere caught Tens off guard. His slowly degrading posture showed his exhaustion. The thump of the thick polymer sole of the moccasin-clad foot, stepping back to regain balance, was immediately followed by cackling laughter, which could only be produced by an avian. "You know she can literally pick you up and throw you, right?" The mocking tone of the bird's voice was obvious in his laughter. "I think you forget how dense we are." Tense chided back with as much humor as he could muster. His mind hung on that "we" part. His elders always taught him how important it was to maintain his composure, especially around other species, but he couldn't help himself. His normally rock-solid expression of contentment and peace dropped as his mind tried to wrap itself around this new word, human. As he sat himself down in the co-pilot besides Binko, the unease grew more and more intense. If they didn't even call themselves the same thing, and were using a word that he didn't even recognize, Anishinaabewan then. The feeling of growing unease slowly became one of deep concern. How much has the Elder Council and GCC been keeping from everyone? Trying to shift his mind to somewhere better, he thought to himself, "In any case, I may get to see a real beaver." The Gardens of Deathworlders, Part 4. Okay. But why exactly should I care? Why should you? Are fucking serious right now? Those are aliens? There's a whole alien civilization. A bunch of them. We need to get our shit together and at least pretend like we don't hate each other. And we should be honest with them, because if they don't already know, they'll figure it out pretty goddamn quick. Pulling a rather large and plump strawberry from the plant he was pruning, Mick turned towards the furious red-haired yelling at him in his garden. He pointed the tip of the strawberry at Sarah in an accusatory manner, before eating it in a single bite. And do you really want to start off this relationship with lies and half-truths, too? Wow, really? She scoffed. Sarah was visibly taken aback by that comment. She literally took an entire step back from where Mick was working and folded her arms in an outlandish response to the offense, turning her head away to accentuate how offended she was. It was taking all of her self-control to not break character. Mick, however, did not fall for her fake emotional display. Either he had figured out her well-trained manipulation techniques, or he really didn't care. She was unsure. Completely ignoring her, Mick had turned back to his plants and continued his down through the row of strawberry plants, partially hanging from a hydroponic trellis. Sarah was keeping up her act with a heavy pout, which Mick also ignored. As he came to the end of the row, he picked an especially large strawberry, nearly the size of his palm. Taking a few steps back toward Sarah, he offered the strawberry with an outstretched hand. Here, try this and tell me what you think. It's something special I came up with. Slowly pulling one of her arms from her chest, Sarah cautiously reached forward and took the bright red berry. Examining it for a moment, nothing seemed off about it. To her mind, this just looked like an especially large, yet completely normal, strawberry dice. She remembered hearing about some massive, delicious winter strawberries somewhere, but didn't want to give Mick the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, I know. They say the bigger the strawberry, the less flavor it has. She looked away from the berry and toward Mick with an accusatory glare. Not bothering to ask questions she knew she wouldn't get an answer to, she decided to just try her luck. Bringing the strawberry into the mouth and biting into it, the juices danced in her mouth and imparted a flavor she was not expecting. The shock of what she tasted might have caused her to spit it out. However, her higher brain took over, and she held it in, letting the unexpected yet incredibly delightful combination fill her taste buds. Her eyes slightly rolled back before they closed, quickly shoving the rest of the strawberry into her mouth and tearing off the bit of leaf at the end. She didn't want this experience to end. It took her a moment to finally collect herself, open her eyes, and form a response. Why did that taste like it was dipped in dark chocolate? The mixture of rich and sweet flavors still lingered on her tongue as the words left her mouth. I don't think I'll ever get the texture right. Mick stepped around Sarah as she was trying her best to still maintain her facade of offense. I think I got the flavor just about right. He motioned for her to follow as he started to pass her. We're not done. And you can't bribe me with your GMO fruits, even if they taste like heaven. Sarah turned to walk next to Mick as the two slowly made their way through a portion of the aquaponics ring. The two walked in silence for a few moments as they passed by a variety of different plants and growing systems designed for their needs. Much like the strawberries, a variety of different leafy greens and small fruits were being grown in intricate trellis systems designed to even distribute lighting and nutrients. Along one wall, stretching the entire length of the quarter segment, was semi-mobile systems of low, flat, hydroponic trays, which housed a variety of grains in multiple states of development. Interspersed throughout the